Well, yeah, that I kind of am a little bit. So
Yeah,
Hobbs, well, you get to turn your camera on so I can see you. CK's not joining us today.
I did. It's just not working. Looks like.
Oh,
Yeah, sometimes this computer here, start my video. Let's see if that works. Sometimes this computer just doesn't do it for whatever reason.
You need video? I can get you.
I can just do it on my phone. Let's see here.
it's just me knocking shit off. Knocking shit off the desk.
I like your I like your background. It's the lust for dramatic landscapes experienced by all flatlanders.
Yeah, I tell people pretty often it's kind of up toward the top of Ophir Pass on the Ophir side. So that's the town of Ophir. You can see, where is it? I suck at green screen. There.
Ophir in that Colorado?
Yeah, yeah. And this is up in the San Juan Mountains. They call it the Switzerland of America.
Oh, nice. Yeah. All right. Thank you to my lovely wife, whose maiden name you already know.
All right, what freaking time is it? It's 1.
That's fine. Leave meeting on my phone. That. How's CK doing?
She's doing great. I think she's in San Antonio for business. So let me do a quick intro here, and then we can just roll into it and just have a good conversation.
Very good.
Hey gang, Red Hills Rancher back this week for a solo episode. Our first 2-time guest, not our first 2-time recorder. That actually goes to Dallas Mount, but I'm keeping that episode for later. It's aging well in the storage can. So today we've got Hobbs Magaret from Sisters Cattle Company. Hobbs, buddy, it's been a while. How are you?
I'm doing well, my friend. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm glad that it's hoodie weather again.
Oh yeah,
nice.
absolutely.
That's
one of the
nice.
benefits of being up here in the Pacific Northwest in the high desert is we get to hit hoodie weather a little bit earlier than you. I see you've adopted the Regenerative Grazier's standard monastic clothing, which is the black hoodie.
Well, there's that, and my brown pants, but I have a brown shirt on. I've got okay, so I'm brown and black. I guess I'm not really.
I do the black hoodie and the tan pants religiously.
I can claim I invented tan pants because there was nobody wearing tan pants when I started doing it. When I started wearing my brown pants, when I started wearing my Duluth pants 7 or 8 years ago, maybe it's 6. But it's practical. I like all the pockets.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That's wonderful. And you got to do something to break out of the Wrangler mold, right?
Yeah, and I carry. You've probably never seen it in my TikToks, but I wear a pair of lineman's pliers.
Sure.
And a crescent wrench,
right,
and a holster on my belt. Because just having these 2 tools on my belt and a Leatherman in my waistband, that saves so many trips back to the truck, so many trips back to the shop for a tool. A couple of weeks ago, I was up, I had to go turn on a water tank, and I took the valve operator with me, which is just a piece of 2-inch PVC with the slot cut out of one end so you can reach down into the hole and turn the valve.
Right.
So I was out there, I was messing around. I got it on there and I was turning the valve, and the valve was a little bit tight and it just popped off. Shit. I'm 2.5 miles away from my headquarters. It takes 9 minutes to get there in the gator, and there's 2 gates I had to open.
Right.
But you know what? I've got a Leatherman on my belt, and it's got a saw on it that's pretty good. So I just made a new one in about 4 minutes. I couldn't even have gotten to the shop to use the proper tool faster than I used the Leatherman on the belt. So
did you just chop off part of the PVC and make a new slot?
Yeah, I had to cut it off flush, and then had to make a new slot on both sides. So it's 5 cuts, but
ingenuity.
Yeah, I got it done. Got it done without having to go all the way back to the shop.
That's right. Time and money.
Yeah, and that's, getting things done with less and having everything you need to get the job done. That's kind of important. And if you don't have everything done, if as long as you can make do with what you got and
That's
save
your
an hour of your life.
that's the overall theme for our conversation: making do with less, getting it done with less.
I like it. I like it. So you've caught a little bit of hell lately on social media, haven't you?
No comment. I don't know. What are you regarding to? What are you speaking to specifically?
Oh, well, I guess we don't really have to really get down into the weeds too much until we get really controversial. But no, some of the things you've shared with me, I want to talk about is you said, I've begun to clearly realize that we're doing collapse ranching in regenerative disguise.
Oh, right. Yeah. I'm not very controversial, is it?
I'm not sure I get that.
Well, I think I envision the human organism as one sort of loosely collective hive mind, and I think that we as a population are sensing that an impending dramatic shift in resource availability is upon us. And considering that, as you and many of your guests and I have discussed, our current agricultural system is so fossil fuel dependent that any system that is going to survive beyond a massive drop in resource availability is in essence going to be collapse ranching. And the regenerative disguise is sort of the feel good sort of marketing wing of collapse ranching. It's like, oh, we're taking care of the soil. And it's like, well, actually we're trying to not die when we don't have gas, kind of.
Well, is it a race to the bottom? Like Mike Callicrate says, everybody wants to be the last man standing, the low cost producer. Is it a race to the bottom? Are some people in a race to the bottom that think they're doing regenerative?
I would say so this is interesting. If you are in a race to the bottom, I believe that you are probably just sort of a linear evolution of industrial agriculture. You're trying to just reduce your inputs. But once agriculture undergoes a lateral evolution, that will be what I think is the real heart and soul, the animating principle of agriculture moving forward. And it's not just the race to the bottom is built within the context of our existing economic paradigm, which I think is probably on its shakiest last legs. And considering the fact that 40% of every dollar that has been in existence since 1789 or whatever has been printed in the last year, I think that's pretty good indication that we have some massive changes afoot. So if it's characterized simply as a race to the bottom, I think that's still sort of chained within the old paradigm of thinking. So yeah, I think that most industrial producers, or most producers with the goal of trying to reduce their costs as much as possible, are certainly in a race to the bottom. I don't relate to that personally in my own. I think maybe a race to the bottom is sort of the distant cousin of collapse ranching, with a couple of different expectations about how the future might be.
I don't know about you. I feel like I'm pretty doom and gloom right now about the future, honestly.
Well, then you're a collapse rancher.
Yeah, I guess to some extent. There's a way out. I mean, there's a way out, but it doesn't seem to be very popular. Like, the way out is regenerative agriculture, is small community based agriculture, and putting more people back on the farms and growing shit that people actually eat.
Right. And it'll take, and sort of the issue that I think that we're touching on is, what is the catalyst for that? You cannot get the momentum of people's lives is completely unchangeable on a large scale without some massive outside force, right? I mean, the dinosaurs didn't go extinct and have a lateral evolution into birds, allowing the rise of small mammals into basically what we have today without a massive asteroid hitting the earth. And I think that that's what our agriculture in analogy, I think that's what our agriculture industry is going to require in order for us to, necessity is the mother of invention, and we're going to require that outside impulse to give us the necessity to return to that small scale. Will there be a lot of death and starvation? Well, the cadence of history seems to indicate that yes, there probably will. And that's not, that might be a controversial thing to get into, and I certainly don't want to sound too much like a prepper. And
I don't think it's controversial at all. I mean, I think you're absolutely right, but it's also important to say, if you want a better chance of living through that period in history, and you want a better chance of your genetics and your bloodline surviving, you need to get the hell out of the big city and learn how to grow your own food.
Right. And I think that's one of the really well cultivated, some of the really well cultivated prepper people that I've sort of read some tangentially. I'm not particularly into that subgenre of existence, but they are keenly aware that you have to have a really great balance of self-sufficiency and community integration. Because the people who just put up the wall and fill the moat up with water and alligators, those people are toast over time. But the people who are capable of bringing something to the community and making themselves indispensable and invaluable are the people who are going to be able to contribute the most in the long run. And those people are the ones who are going to be able to harness, as you and I have discussed, and many others, harness the annual input of solar energy most effectively without relying on the credit card of fossil fuels. If we can figure out, I mean, they were doing it 150 years ago. The only problem is that the labor force has been reduced by 98 to 99% and replaced by John Deere at this point. We were producing the same amount of food per person. It's just that everybody was an agrarian, and I think that we will probably be forced to go back that way. And I think most people who are alive today don't want to work that hard. That's for sure.
And I think that we can kind of almost lead into a deeper discussion about geopolitics and economics of the carbon economy. So. And where I'm going with that is I've been doing a lot of reading and research on the carbon economies. And, I found there's 3 carbon quote indexes, and I keep them on my phone. So every day I look on my phone and I see what the price of carbon is on 3 different major indexes. Every article that I can get my hands on about carbon that's even going into economics, I try to read and understand. So the thing that's troubling is I think it's like if carbon is $100 a ton, it adds $1. No, maybe it's like $50. It's somewhere in a $50 to $100 a ton range per carbon. It's going to add $1 per gallon of gasoline. And a year ago, diesel fuel was it was under $2. Life was good. Everybody was happy. And now it's, 360, 363. I think it's like 380 here now. What is it out there?
About the same.
I saw some pictures where it was like $7 in California. Even just trying to farm when things are $4. And there's a tipping point coming really soon. Inputs are all going up. Natural gas is going up. Fuel is $3.50, $4 for farm diesel in most of the country. Natural gas is going up, which means it's going to be more expensive to use that to irrigate next year. Fertilizer is going to be more expensive next year because it's all made from natural gas. pharmaceuticals are going to get more expensive because natural gas and oil are getting more expensive. I talked to one of my oil field friends today, and he's like, "Man, I'd love to come help you out, but boom's on." I said, "Yeah, I saw oil was 66," and he said, "Yep, boom's on. Everybody's wanting to go to work, and everybody's wanting to drill." I'm like, "Well, I'm happy for you. I'm happy you're getting to work, but sure wish you could come help me out on this little project I've got." But anyway,
Same thing happened before the 2008 crash, by the way. The oil prices started to approach a point that was really fantastic for the producers, but not affordable for the consumer. And I've really begun thinking, and I don't want to hijack your momentum here, but I've really begun thinking about money in terms of money being the language of energy.
absolutely.
And I think,
Money is a measure of stored energy. Like I've been thinking about that for a long time, that money is just a representation of stored energy.
right, and it's you, by spending your dollar, are deciding how that energy should be used, both sort of retroactively and moving forward. So like where that energy shall be allocated and how it shall be used. I mean, a lot of people think of the markets as the psychology of the human organism, and if that's the psychology of the human organism, then the individual dollar is the language of energy. And it has some very interesting implications, being that we continue to, since we've decoupled from anything that is finite, that we can.
The energy value ratio between an energy unit of petroleum, oil, versus a human unit of energy or an animal unit of energy, that value ratio is just distorted beyond all recognition.
Right.
And I say that and I bring that up, but sometimes I wonder if that even scans with most people. I mean, you get it, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think about, I certainly think about what are my daily activities. What would it take, in terms of calories in, calorie out, to get what I'm getting, to produce what I'm producing. I think that, it's in terms of a conversation that's actually useful for the people listening. The thing that I wonder about, and that I like to ask people, is if you could only afford half of the fuel next year for your operation, would you stay in business? And depending upon how fast the fuel prices rise, and it's like, okay, well, we'll be able to pass on the cost to the consumer for a while, but at the end of the day, that's not going to last very long, because the chiropractor.
Commodity buyer's not gonna care.
What now?
The commodity buyer's not gonna care.
No, they're
not gonna care that your costs have gone up.
Right. Yeah. Right. I mean, absolutely. In a re-entry into the localized or the hyper localized or regional economy sort of eliminates the commodity buyer to some degree. And with a more centralized system, they are exempted from the social consequences of not caring about the fact that the prices have gone up. People are really excited right now about soybean prices for over this last year. I've never made more money. I keep hearing people say, and it's just like, well, there's never been as much money as there is now. So,
Yeah, money doesn't mean what it did 18 months ago, it seems.
No, it definitely doesn't. And the overall theme is that we very slowly, it's like the shifting baseline happens so slowly. It just seems that it has some interesting implications about the evolution of the human lifetime, because the baseline of the really important things seem to shift just slightly slower than our capacity to observe them. Like whether it's our pastures or whether it's the cost of various goods and services, although that is really starting to test that theory now. But we as human beings seem to have such amazingly short memories, and which is why I think the humanities and history are so incredibly important, because we have to look back and be able to try to take that information and overlay it where we are currently. And if you do that with any degree of reliability, you'll recognize that, okay, I think we're in some real trouble. And so what do we do about that trouble? And that we've come sort of full circle to our conversation, to where our conversation started. So what do we do? And what are you doing in your immediate life? And what am I doing in my immediate life to make those changes?
We have chickens. I tried to grow a garden again this year. It didn't turn out very good. I didn't grow a whole lot of corn. Like, I can tell you this, like, if I was relying on corn to get me through the winter, I'd probably starve. Glad I got a couple cows I can always take if I need to.
Well, and also, you don't need to, as I was saying, you don't need to be entirely self-sufficient. There's a community around you. I mean, it's like, if you can provide, I mean, obviously there'll have to be some level of balancing out. You don't want everybody to be a beef producer in your community, because, you need people to make shoes and stuff, but
make shoes, make nails,
right,
make lumber,
those
fix
are all,
things.
Those are all remarkably important. I mean, have you considered putting in a greenhouse? I mean, shit, you don't even have time probably to put in a greenhouse.
We've been talking about it. Like, she's actually got some plans. She wants to put in a greenhouse. We're really starting to sit down and plan out our garden for next year, but that garden planning is going to start kind of toward the end of November.
Did it just freeze too early on you, or is the soil not working? Or
we've had a frost. We haven't had a killing freeze yet, and there isn't one in the near term forecast for a few days. But we did have a hard enough frost. It killed like a lot of the broadleafs out of the garden, like all the squash, cumber, melon, viney thingies, tomatoes. They've all quit. The okra is still going. It's corn's a warm season crop, so it quit a month ago. But the cool season crops, they're doing good. The carrots look good. Radishes are doing good. We got there's one radish, man. It's like it looks like it's a baseball bat right underneath the leaves.
Oh, nice.
I have no idea how long it is, but it's huge.
That's awesome. It's yeah, those brassicas are really kicking ass up here this year as well. I don't know what it is about this year, but yeah, it's one of the things that I've begun to think about a lot, and especially since my family is leaving Oregon and going to a sort of more year-round grazable area, is that the American West pretty much exists because of irrigation and fossil fuels. Like, that is the only way that the population is able to be maintained in the American West, basically from the mountain ranges that are in the Cascades, or anyway, that from all the way over to basically where the plains start. Amarillo, Texas, where I grew up. Then I guess Cortez went there through. Not Cortez. Coronado went through there in 1512 or something like that. First time Europeans had ever seen hail, and they're like, "There's no way human beings can live here. It's not possible." Well, lo and behold, we invented windmills and then and gasoline, and the race was on. And the reason I say that is, now we're in the third really good year of drought here in Central Oregon. My particular irrigation district did fine this year. Some surrounding irrigation districts, they got cut off in June. Madras, Oregon, which is a huge carrot seed producer, lots of hay, lots of alfalfa. They got cut off in June as the North District of the irrigation, the North Unit of the irrigation district. They got cut off in June. And so what conversation do you think got the most amount of press that was happening there? It wasn't we need to change our farming practices. It wasn't, we need to recognize that potentially there are some changes in the climate, whether they're human caused or not. The conversation is the government is stealing our water and giving it to the fish. You know, that's the conversation. Like, no responsibility being taken there. It's all, you know, you need to let the river, the Deschutes River basically go dry so that we can irrigate our pastures. And I'm like, that is just the most short-term thinking. And if you look out on a long enough time horizon, I think the American West is kind of a losing bet at this point. In my dystopic opinion, I think that it's going to be really hard to exist here, considering the lack of water and the rising energy costs. And that's one of the reasons why our family decided to move from here in Central Oregon at the first of the year down to East Texas. Like, yeah, it's going to be hot. That's for sure.
I was going to ask. I was going to ask why you guys are moving.
Let's see. Number one, super cold winters. I mean, they're not terrible here, but you know, my parents are getting older. It was a totally data-driven decision. Money, time, market, more than anything. Money, look at what real estate values are in Central Oregon versus what they are in deep East Texas, and you would be shocked at what you can sell for and buy for. And you know, a real estate investment is only as good as your ability to divest from it at an opportune time. So, you know, building this business up over 4 years, proving it out, and then having a family conversation and going, you know, that place that you wanted to retire in for the rest of your life, maybe if we sell it and then buy a fully functional cattle operation for what you can get your basically retirement home for here in Central Oregon, maybe that's a good idea, because then you take a real estate investment here and then you turn it into an income producing investment, which is, you know, generally a good idea, especially considering the landscape of changes that are upon us. And then also time. I run all lease ground out here. And I waste a lot of time and money going from lease operation to lease operation. And then obviously there are the politics of dealing with landowners. And even if things are clearly laid out contractually, you know, people still have needs and concerns and opinions. And ultimately being able to run your own operation with less friction is certainly a good idea. And, you know, initially we looked at, you know, Eastern Oregon. We looked at Northern California. We even looked at Missouri to some degree. But the problem with like Eastern Oregon,
You didn't want to come be my neighbor?
Oh, I would love to be your neighbor, Brian.
There's ranches for sale, like within an hour.
Well, yes, yeah. You know what? I think you're one of those shining beacons of hope that for that area, and I'm going to go be the shining beacon of hope, or just somebody with a target on my back, depends on what. But near Lufkin, Texas. But also one of the reasons that we went to Lufkin is because it's within 1 day shipping of four major metro areas: Oklahoma City, Dallas, Austin, and Houston. Now, I know that flies in the face of the whole energy conversation that we're having. However, it's not going to die overnight, and as we can build
the proximity is still relevant,
right? You know, the proximity definitely. My sister's coming to pick up the arrow bed. The proximity is definitely still relevant, and right now, what the consumer wants and can still afford is, you know, a 25-pound box of beef delivered to their door. And so I'm going to use that in order to build up the business, maybe eventually over time transition that into a more localized market, maybe a butcher shop or something of that nature, but do the best business that I can under the current business environment. And then, you know, that puts us in a position to roll with the times, whatever may happen. But if we're betting completely, I mean, before I even got back into the
Can't bet completely on collapse. Can't
No.
bet completely on widespread systemic change. I think
No.
anybody that does that is a fool.
Right. So that's like, so you got to put yourself in a position to be as nimble as possible. So, I mean, that's basically the reason that we, and that's also why I don't have, 2 years of dried foods stored in my basement. So I haven't bet completely on collapse, but I guess, to your earlier point, if you go ahead and look at your situation from the point of collapse, you will have already integrated the race to the bottom aspect while getting the philosophy right as well. Because if you're just all like, I'm gonna slaughter all my beef and then put it in the freezer and then save it for for the incoming problem that's going to happen in the next 6 months or whatever, like that, that's not going to happen. That's stupid. Like, stay in business, continue doing that. But the rancher who relies completely on taking their calves to the sale barn is 100% exposed to any systemic shocks. And so you don't want to be 100% exposed to any of those things. Obviously, people want to are going to want beef always, and so there is going to need to be, to some degree, some centralized brokering system for that.
McDonald's and Burger King and Taco Bell, they're not going to go away overnight either.
No, not at all. But it's our responsibility, just like we have short memories, and we need to have long memories and also long future horizons. And so planning over the next 50 years, a small change over 1 year in one direction or the other, if it continues on that trajectory, will be a massive difference in 50 years. So if you put yourself in a position where you can do well, regardless of whether those are, regardless of the divergence. I'm sorry, I'm still getting over this cold. Kicking my ass, that long cold.
You don't have COVID, do you?
No, I don't think so. Our daughter got a COVID test when this sort of ran through the family, and it was COVID negative. You can't rule out false positives, but I hope I did, because then that means I have natural immunity. So
you're not worried about it anyway, are you?
Me, no, I'm a healthy young person, and I also know that I'm not really afraid to die, so that doesn't really bother me that much. But
what about the community up there? Is everybody freaked out wearing masks? And
yeah, well, Central Oregon is becoming a what you might consider a progressive hub spillover from the valley, and while there is still a significant conservative holdout, it is becoming much more progressive, because the only people who can live here, and another part about Central Oregon is it's basically West Coast rich people's playground of the decade. And so the people who can live here are the people who lived in Portland, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Seattle, who made all their money being engineers and software developers and real estate brokers and financiers and things like that. And so those people are more tuned into the corporate culture, which by definition is more in the, what you might refer to as the woke population. So people are definitely really freaked out about it. And they don't recognize that that the government uses any possible opportunity to control people that they can get, no matter what it is. If they can get you to respond to something, then that is a control mechanism for them.
Yeah, the government's only bad when a Republican's in charge.
Yeah, it's that's definitely interesting. Yeah,
I was sitting here, you were talking about, woke, and I've been thinking about cancel culture and like that Dave Chappelle thing. Like, he had that special, The Closer. I haven't seen it yet. Apparently it's hilarious.
I watched it. It's hilarious. That guy is a genius.
But no, they were like, Dave, they're going to cancel you. They're going to cancel you on Twitter. And he goes, F that. I don't care. Twitter's not even a real place.
That's right. That's exactly right. It's remarkable, dude. I mean, you and I experience the same thing, particularly on TikTok. It's just it allows the nastiest part of people to come out and say things that you would never ever say in if you were together in a real place, because there could actually be real social and physical consequences. You know that is the thing that keeps people civil, is that they can get punched in the face. Like you, like I don't know. It's just like I get called like. The other day, in the span of 15 minutes, I got called a Democrat wannabe rancher and a conservative elitist within 5 minutes.
Probably on the same comment thread.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Exactly.
Same video.
It's like, okay. But I think to some degree there is an unclassifiability about what you do and about what I do that renders people very confused. They don't know where to put it in their brain, so they automatically just classify it as the unknown, which is sort of immediately swept into the enemy territory. And I understand that that's what's going on.
Well, one of the directions I was kind of going, you're talking about this woke West Coast culture, and to them nothing is binary, right? Like you can't be a boy or a girl. Like you might be somewhere in between. I mean, everything is a spectrum, and nothing is A or B. Why are they still lumping everybody into left or right politically? When can we get rid of that binary?
It's never going to happen. I mean, ultimately, one of the, we've always been a tribal species. And I don't know, this is the funny thing about, politics. I was just thinking, the important stuff is nonpartisan. It's the what you can and can't do that's sort of around the fringes that are the so-called wedge issues, right? It's like abortion, gun rights, vaccination. Those are the wedge issues, and obviously the COVID vaccinations are the wedge issue of wedge issue du jour, as you might say. So it's definitely when are we going to stop classifying people into left and right? I mean, it's not going to happen because we need these two groups to balance each other out. One group, the conservatives, tend to be more rigid. They tend to be more rooted in the past, and that tends to create a more stable environment, but also can ossify into something that becomes tyrannical. However, so there are good and bad aspects of it. On the other side, with the liberal aspect, we need people who are more free thinking, more open, who can, push the limits of what we're kind of thinking how we address reality. However, if that goes too far, then we become untethered from any sort of stability. And if you start doing repairs on the boat too much in the middle of the ocean, it sinks, So you need a counterbalance between these two. And so the question that maybe we're asking is, when is it going to stop being weaponized? And I really just don't know the answer to that question. I don't think it ever will. I think that probably the fact that there are so many people so connected on such a superficial level has created such a superficial conversation that it has to be broken down into tiny little sound bites and 90 characters or however much you can do on Twitter.
And that's some of the reasons that I love doing this podcast, because just 280 characters on Twitter or 7-minute segment on the news, it's not enough to talk about some of these things and really unpack and nuance and really examine an issue from all sides. And I don't have to fit into 7 minutes. I don't have an editor or producer standing over there telling me to shut up or tell me what I can and can't say. Nobody's going to do that. Then again, I'm also not going to poke the bear and say, hey, cancel culture, come after me. But that's not what I'm doing.
Good idea.
What I'm saying, I don't know what I'm saying.
How does there's one interesting thing about the whole left versus right continuum that's fascinating to me. And it's that the localized aspect seems to be the localized agricultural aspect, localized regenerative market garden CSA aspect, which is probably closer to the future of regional food security than commodity industrial agriculture, seems to be dominated by the left, particularly in Central Oregon. This may not be the same way everywhere, but in Central Oregon, the people who are way more interested in connecting with the local community seem to be more on the liberal side of the spectrum. And none of those people can ride a horse, which is, as we discussed in the first podcast we did, like, it's basically, gardeners and people who walk their cows around. Like me, I'm one of those people. I understand that. I get my cows to follow me. However, I also grew up in the traditional ranching community and can, do all the cowboy shit. I try to avoid it when I can, but I can do it. And I think that the real problem with regional food security, or food security with us as a nation, is actually kind of is colored by that blue versus red conversation. There has to be more. There has to be, and here's a great example. Like, one of the reasons that my agriculture career has actually been able to be revived is because of a guy named Jim Wood, who's kind of adopted me. He has a vet degree from the University of Glasgow, but he has a 40,000 acre ranch out in the Oregon desert, and so he's a vet, but he's an operator. That's what he does. He doesn't really practice veterinary. And he is the strangest combination of Portland punk rock and, vaquero tradition and, Scottish literature culture and because of that, he's just like the right down the middle centrist guy. And he is able to flow in and out of all of the communities, whether it's regenerative or the commodity. And that is one of the things that's made him so successful. And that's one of the things I try to model myself after as well, because I think that, agriculture has no political position. The fact that it has been dissected and split apart is very somewhat troubling to me. And so I guess my question is, how do we bring those two parts together? And obviously, I understand that my informedness on that particular subject is my little part of the world. So the Red Hills of Kansas may be a different perspective.
I think people are kind of unwilling to accept that they might not be able to get a strawberry banana smoothie in January.
That's exactly right.
I mean, I think people aren't necessarily willing to accept some sacrifices, not just for the betterment of their community, but the betterment of the whole world. Just thinking about the steep price, all the miles that are typically on a meal on an average American plate, it boggles the mind. And
no, it does boggle the mind. The other day, I opened my cupboard and I saw all of the coffee cups I had in there, like 12 coffee cups, and I was just disgusted with myself. Just like, why in the fuck do I need 12 coffee cups? Seriously, I need max 2, in case I break one. Like, there's no reason for me to have 12 coffee cups. And this is actually informs, I've been reading this book as a result of sort of this new realization about of the monastic aspect of regenerative agriculture, and called Secluded Times, a short history of monks and monasteries, basically in the Christian tradition, from the time shortly after Christ till now, in between listening to country rap anyway. And I think that is one. I mean, these guys they existed on nothing. They absolutely existed on nothing. And we have gone so far from our original hunter-gatherer ability to live in the seasons and ultimately live without much at all during certain times, during probably a lot of the time, to, as you said, having a strawberry shake or strawberry sundae in January, or eating avocados in Washington State. This is that kind of insane behavior that doesn't make any sense. And I think that what human beings need more than anything is to do less. Stop wanting to there's one quote that the Buddha has that I like a lot. He says, "You can know the whole world without leaving your front step." And I think ranchers know this better than anybody, because the one thing ranchers don't like to do or avoid doing, probably because of consequences, but also probably because it's their nature, is going on vacations. If you can go on a vacation once in a while for a little bit of respite, that's nice. But
you just have to accept that there's going to be some things messed up when you get home. That's the reality of it. There's no such thing as going on vacation and coming home and everything being perfect in the ranching business. Even if it's an overnight vacation, just expect something to be messed up.
Yeah, and that's why I believe that I believe, and this is sort of my most recent. I know other people have had this realization, but I'm trying to, really trying to think it through, that the regenerative operations are a sort of monastery, the new monasteries. And I've also, for a long time, I've thought that ranching itself is particularly the cowboy Western ranching cowboy tradition is this odd sort of commingling of a monastic and military existence, because you're kind of by yourself a lot. You're out there just looking quiet, watching the grass grow. Who else watches the grass grow, right? Not that many people watch the grass. And also, but on the other hand, but cowboying itself is a martial art, and that requires not necessarily you're not out there fighting horses and fighting cows, even though sometimes that is an aspect of it.
Feels like it.
You're controlling you're mastering yourself. I mean, because any great horseman or cattleman will tell you have to master yourself, right, before you can master what's your relationship with that animal. So it's an interesting combination of it's like the great ranchers are basically the Shaolin monks of the North American West, and I think that they also are more prepared to live with less.
Put my dark hood up so I kind of get
Yeah,
that
there you
monk
go.
aesthetic. I like it. Bob Kinford, I was thinking Bob Kinford, he says, timing, feel, focus, and balance. He said, if you don't have timing, feel, focus, and balance, it shows as soon as you get on the back of a horse. And it's the same when you're working cattle on foot. It's timing, feel, focus, and balance. All things must balance. You got to feel where that animal is. A half a step at the wrong time will make it, and that animal will want to do something completely different. I like your monastery analogy. I dig it. I can almost see, a head monk and then having some other, subordinate monks and then some intern monks that actually go out and run the reels and pick up the water, move the water, or, they're the ones that are out there sleeping with the cows, keeping them in a herd. I dig it.
Yeah, it's not too far-fetched to think that might be necessary moving forward. And also, it's a great preservation of knowledge. And also, there's one of the things that's interesting about the history of monasticism is that they really brought a huge amount of knowledge about how to produce food to these areas that were referred to largely as barbarians, and so they were great, knowledge receptacles of food production. I mean, producing wine, producing beer, producing crops. And I think that, we're into the period where you're going to have a bunch of monk-like people moving the cattle however many times a day you decide is right for your operation, whatever, and the reason I started thinking about this is because I was talking to my mom the other day about, people are like, what, how do you have time to move your cows 4 times a day? Like, how do you have that time? You know, and I always make time for it. And my mother said, well, that's because the type of work you do is very monk-like. It's very much like a monk, and it's like a meditation when you move your cows. It's like doing it so frequently. And so that started me down this whole line of thinking, and had me reading this book as well. And I think that I think that monks had set times for daily activities, and I think ranches have, and especially a regenerative ranch where you move your cattle frequently, have set times for daily activities. I don't know exactly what the prayers that are prayed would be, but I think outside of please be in, please be in, please be in.
That's just when they're along the highway.
Right. So yeah, I think, I'm glad you have an appreciation of that, of that monastic aspect of the whole thing.
Well, thanks. It makes sense. I'm not sure we'll ever, like have like kind of that, the model that I have, like the vision I have in my head of, about 30 guys in brown robes doing a chant about, the different species of grass or whatever. And then, some guys going out and herding them around on foot. It's a fun vision. It might make a cool movie, but I don't see it happening. But
well, not in that. Not in that.
I mean, to some extent, like, I think about operations. I won't name any names, but some operations that kind of have a master grazer that does, that's kind of more moving on to consulting and stuff now, that has interns that come in that do the monitoring, do the clipping and weighing, moving the cows and running the reels and moving the water and whatnot. Is that similar?
Absolutely, that's exactly what I was thinking, and I was going to use basically polyface as an example of that. I think that probably what Joel Salatin probably has one of the OG examples of that, because I mean, he's a very spiritual guy anyway. So it would make sense that his whole operation would, lean towards that. And I think that there are going to be a lot more of those moving forward. And grazing is getting just better. Like
I don't think Joel wears brown pants yet.
Yeah, well,
he's still a blue jean guy.
Black hoodie and brown pants, man. We got it going on. That's the official dress. Yeah, we're
Black hoodie and brown pants, official dress of regenerative grazers everywhere. You heard it here first, y'all.
That's right. That's exactly right. I don't know if I'll ever be able to get behind shorts, but you never know. Maybe.
I can't do the shorts. Does somebody do shorts? Does somebody go move cows in their shorts?
Zeetzman wears shorts.
Well, he's from South Africa.
Yeah.
I mean, I was going to say, like anybody outside of Australia, anybody in this country, go out and walk and move cows in shorts.
No, I don't know of anybody. I don't know of anybody.
Haven't seen that on social media yet. Like I think most guys are still, cowboy hats and Wranglers and boots.
Maybe I decided like the super short shorts, like Daisy Duke cutoffs, moving. Grass is going to be pretty tall in Lufkin, so that could be a.
What about a kilt?
Now we're talking.
I mean, if I did it, I'd get yelled at for cultural appropriation. That's the word. Yeah.
Yeah, you probably would, but I don't know. I think that we might be exempt. I'm sure you look pretty Scottish to me, my friend.
Big red beard. I could probably get away with it.
I think you certainly could. Yeah. What's happening in your world over the winter? Hey, I've been wanting to ask you about your Corianis. How are they doing? How's that operation looking?
They're doing good. Breed up was equivalent to the Angus and Hereford herd that we're commingled with. Calf crop looks really good. My yearling heifers looking awesome. The one steer that I retained, he gained 2.8 pounds per day this summer.
Wonderful.
I mean, from when I put the EIDs in May 7th, when we weighed him. Well, I don't know. I have to look when that was, but it was sometime back in September. He gained 2.8 pounds a day.
That's wonderful.
So I'll be getting him a slaughter date. He goes in the freezer next year. So right about this time, we'll be looking for a slaughter date for him. As far as breed up, I don't want to say the number, but it was not quite as great as we would have liked. Tested the bulls. It was just, my cows actually did a little bit better than his, and he blames his on old cows, and going through the records and looking at what I got that's bred and what's not. Well, yeah, that's mostly old cows, but you're going to have that. You're going to have a bunch of fallout with sale barn cows, and so.
And you got a lot of those out of Texas, is that right?
Yeah, I got about half of them out of Texas, and
where in Texas? What sale barn?
Lampasas.
Okay.
So that's like south and central, or central south, I think. I don't know. I haven't looked at a map, seen where it is.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. So I'm starting to think about what I'm gonna do in terms of genetics down in Lufkin as well, and I think it's always a wonderful opportunity to be able to start right.
I think in that area, I think a Beefmaster would do really, really good in that area. I guessed a couple of weeks ago, my friend John Locke, he'd tell you need to have some Bos Taurus in there, because he'd want to sell you some Brahma cattle.
Yeah.
But he's down, I think they're just like south and west, or west of Houston and a little bit south, not real far from the coast. And it's hot and humid. But then again, some of it's also going to depend on what your forage base is going to be. If you're on native range or improved or planted pastures,
Yeah. So it was funny when we went down there to look at the ranch, it was a really beautiful example of.
Does it have cows on it?
He did. He has Brangus cows and like a bunch of bulls that were hanging out in the bull pasture. But
you didn't want to buy any of them?
We tried to work it into the deal, but it was just one of those things that didn't quite work out. So.
Well, I've had a lot of people tell me that, like, if you want to go get great cows, go buy the ranch they're standing on.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's we tried to work that into the deal, but it just that would have I don't want to get into the details too much, but it would have pushed the price to a place that we didn't really want to go. So ultimately, we're going to have to we definitely have a plan to get what we need going. So it was interesting when we were there. The Brangus cows, they were a little bit large for my take. When I saw him there, it was interesting. He clearly had them split into three groups: the heifers, the middle aged, and the old. And all the old cows had these grayish calves, and so they were terminally crossed to a Charolais, which was what was my thought. Then we got over to the bull pasture, and there's this really nice studly looking Brangus bull standing right across the fence from the heifers. And they were all with calves, so it wasn't too excited about getting in there. But then we got around the corner, and there was a Charolais bull standing in the pond. So it was a pretty fantastic example of heat resistance or heat adaptation, right, staring us in the face. So yeah, it would have. We definitely made a play for those cows, but it was the guy was a pretty recalcitrant old feller, and
probably thought they're worth a whole bunch more than you did.
They were definitely. He was. I think over time, I think that we can do something. I eventually would like to see an animal on our property that's about 50% Bos Taurus, 50% Bos Indicus. Whether that is Brangus or something like that. Obviously, it's going to have to be half some sort of British based, and then the Bos Indicus is kind of the question mark. I have some ideas, but and Jaime and I have talked about it to some degree, and he definitely has his opinions about what goes, and I certainly do graze more similarly to him than pretty much anybody else, down from Zeetzman. But it's been interesting to watch his descent into marketer not descent, probably maybe ascent into marketer, consultant, teacher, because he's going into the whole online course world, which has its own variety of stuff. Like, hey, let's do a master class, and then I'll pitch you my course at the end, kind of thing. So I'm glad to see him, and he's making he's getting a lot of progress. Several years ago when I started doing what he's called total grazing now, which I'm not sure I'm in love with the name, but
I think it's a terrible name.
yeah, it's anyway. So when I started doing that method several years ago, you couldn't find anybody who was doing it. You could not find anybody, and I think maybe you and I were the only people. And at that point, Michael Kinsey hadn't even really switched over to it yet. And but now people are doing that all over. When I actually just jumped into his masterclass just to see it, and there were 2 people from the Panhandle of Texas, on Jaime's masterclass, and I was like, I did not see that coming. So it's definitely, it's the wave is here for regenerative grazing, and people, and I think a lot of people are involved in that. I just want to make more money. I really want to make more money. I want my cattle to do better. I want to be on a better nutritional plane. I want to stop screwing my pastures over. And, everybody's really, really down with that now, more so than ever. And I think it's the people who don't have massive ranches who are really getting into that more so than the folks who do.
There's something to be said about the people that are managing their own ranch too. I think that, the people that are managing their own ranch, like me and Mike Kinsey, it's easy for us to do this regenerative stuff. If we need to change infrastructure or get some water or move a fence, I don't have to go ask 53 landlords. I just go, oh, let's go move the fence. And then I tell my labor unit, which is also me, to go move the fence. So
it's and that that's that hype. That's sort of another fractalization of that hyper locality thing. You're extremely decentralized, so you just you get to make it happen, and you don't have to go up the chain of a vertically integrated corporation, or go look in the bylaws or the standard operating procedures. And also, I think there's a big difference. Certainly, what I'm seeing out in the Oregon desert, there's a big difference between the as you just mentioned, the ranches that are owned and operated by an individual versus a massive corporation that that sells cell phones or tires,
or Turner Broadcasting.
Right, exactly.
Don't sue me, please.
Right. It's right. It's just like, see, that is that's a fascinating aspect viewed through the lens of the language of money being the language of energy. Like, you're capturing a huge swath of the economy, a tiny little piece of a huge swath of the economy with TV or cell phones or tires, and then you just amalgamate that into a rainfall insurance and tax shelter, I don't want to say scheme, but operation. And whereas an operation that is self-contained, does not have that access. And so, as you were getting at, those people are the ones who are forced to get as much out of their land as they can, which means they have to utilize solar energy in the most efficient manner because they don't have any access to any other part of the economy. And it goes back to the tangential. I'll head that direction in another little.
Go for it.
Oh, well, this is what I've been thinking about. As we were discussing via text the other day, I really think that regenerative agriculture, even though I still hate the name regenerative agriculture. I just don't. I don't know. I haven't been able to put my finger.
Nobody's come up with anything better yet.
I agree with that totally.
It's a lot better than sustainable.
Yeah, people are trying all of the time, and for some reason, this 5-syllable word is sticks and it works. And I don't know why, but it's just, and I think it has mostly to do with it feels like still just the redheaded stepchild of industrial agriculture instead of it being its own thing. It's, in a way, agriculture should just be regenerative agriculture. It should just be, and you know what? Agriculture
because the big players are getting involved and they're trying to co-opt and greenwash the name and rewrite what it means.
I mean, and to some degree, agriculture was split from the natural ecology because it was, it started as basically gardening, and then it was just this one little outcrop, and then it became this massive industrial centralized thing. And then as we started trying to wind our way back into a naturalized, ecologically harmonious way of doing things, suddenly it just feels like we're going full circle back into ecology. It's like it's just it almost feels to me like we should just be calling it ecology. Like when humans interact with the ecology, like we make food. Like that's kind of what we do. I mean, and in any other time that we interact with or we make energy, like harvesting timber. So that's, that is our harness of energy to some degree. We're harnessing solar energy to build our houses or to warm our houses, or food or fruits or beef. We're just harvesting energy, and that's what ecology does is energy harvesting and transfer. And so the fact that we've split it out into this weird thing that feels separate, it still feels like human beings are not, it still feels like human beings are separated, even when you call it regenerative agriculture. And I know this is kind of a stupid conversation to be having, but what I've been thinking about lately is that this is the very confused and chaotic seed of a new religion, as we were discussing the other day. And it's the newest form of sun worship, because we're going back to worshiping the sun through our activities of trying to utilize it as efficiently as we possibly can, and in a way that honors it. Like we don't want to, like we waste so much sunlight, when you have bare ground, you're wasting sunlight. You're allowing you're not sufficiently honoring the miracle of photons. And, we can get in, you're not sufficiently honoring the miracle that solar energy really is by relying so much on inputs and fossil fuels. And so in a way, I really believe that what we're calling regenerative agriculture is the seed of the newest form of sun worship. And I have to think that it's going to take me several years to think through this. So check back with me in a few years, and I might have a more cohesive way to talk about this. But to me, Christianity effectively died in as a centralized animating principle for the Western world right around World War I. And then after that, it's been scientific materialism that was exploded into existence, with probably with the nuclear bomb, and then has been dominating everything ever since. Gosh, I'm having trouble. It might have been Heisenberg. I think it was Heisenberg who he said he only had two laws of physics. The first one was the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, or I think that was his first one. And the second one that never got any attention is Atman equals Brahman. And so he was very, very steeped in the Vedic text, which is like matter equals energy, in a way of saying that the whole is the so Brahman is the Atman is the man, material, and then Brahman is the whole, the immaterial, that thing, that unknown from which everything springs. So what happened was the great scientists who gave rise to the material understanding of the world had to do that from a place of deep sort of spiritual or mystical understanding. And then we ended up with this really great calculations and these formulas to be able to mess around with material. And then the material itself became the dominating factor. And so basically from the end of World War I and then the rise of particularly the United States through World War II and after World War II, we have scientific materialism that is dominating the view of the world. And that's, and has also been associated with the rise of nihilistic atheism, which is that the world is just
military industrial complex, the industrial food complex, industrial pharma complex.
Right, because we're just a bunch of chemicals and atoms bumping up against each other, which I don't believe at all. And
big walking bag of microbes.
Right, exactly. Just but this whole regenerative aspect is the seed of something new, in my opinion. It's that thing that as we were talking earlier, the human population as a whole is one organism, and it's feeling, it can detect that scientific materialist view of the world is lacking and has just turned us into flesh robots, which is totally wrong. And it can detect that that's not working, and it's dying, and it's not making us happy or fulfilled or imbued with any degree of meaning or purpose, and quite frankly fails as a centralized animating principle for us as a species or member of member of the natural community. So what is trying to be born right now is this new animating principle, which I think regenerative agriculture is one of its first expressions, and sort of a new orientation. And it's going to be fascinating to see what happens over the next 100 years to see, and it might be that vision you're having of the brown robed monks moving cows and moving the water and running polywire might be closer to a reality than we initially think.
Maybe it's not a brown robe. Maybe it's like a cowhide robe or a buffalo skin robe, because that's all because there's no more cotton.
Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. But anyway, as many people have pointed out, the monasteries kept some really great knowledge alive through the Dark Ages. And if it is in the cards for us to go through another Dark Age and collapse, which if you follow the exponential growth of human population inside any closed natural system, it falls off a cliff every time. And that's exactly that's almost guaranteed to happen for us.
And the resource consumption population model works with every species. Like eventually there's a crash. And
That's right.
So are we going to have a convergence of empire collapse and resource scarcity? Is the resource scarcity going to bring about the last empire collapse?
Yeah, for a long time. I mean, probably maybe another several hundred, 300, 400 years. I don't know. We might see another coalescing of political powers into one centralized power. But I think that decentralized tribes is in our future. And that, I'm not saying that we're going to be totally Mad Max. I think there will probably still be some digital component of that. I think that our lives are in this industrial middle ground between agrarian and digital. So it's agrarian, industrial, and then digital. And so much of our existence lives right now in that industrial middle plane. But I think that we're going to see a divergence where where the vast majority of our attention and our energy and resources goes to either a very analog agrarian pastoralist agricultural aspect or a digital aspect, simply because of the computing power that and the efficiency that correctly done computing can create.
Okay, pause right there. So look, we're talking about money as the language of energy. Carbon is a basic unit of life. Carbon is also a basic unit of energy. You know, we talked earlier about, you know, the price of carbon. I mean, like, just in broad terms, the California Carbon Index was trading today at $25. It's been as low as 20. I've seen it at 27. It's usually right around 24 to $25. That's dollars a ton. So at that, we're looking at, you know, that's 25 cents per gallon of gasoline is what that adds to the price. You know, we talked about the energy value ratios being so far distorted between the different forms of energy. And then, you know, I just have a hard time wrapping my head around, you know, on one hand, we've got, you know, folks in the government and pundits saying everything's got to be electric. Everything's got to be electric. Everybody can drive electric cars. How are you going to mine all that crap? Like, you know, the demand for fossil fuels and internal combustion engines, it's not going to go away. Like it's not a switch we can turn off. I mean, we could, but like you said, we're going to experience massive famines, widespread starvation, and extreme civil unrest. And the people in power are going to do everything they possibly can to hold on to as much power as long as they can at the expense of people like us. And the way we make it through is the hyperlocal economy, is a barter economy. It's relying on your friends and neighbors for goods and services and food and security, and not outsourcing that to a faceless government anymore.
That's right. And I think as you're hinting at, a hyper localized economy is by definition an economy that does less. I mean, part of the problem is we got to switch over to electric cars. What? So we can continue fucking driving all of these places that we don't need to go, to have all these jobs that we don't really need to have.
Let's have wind-powered container ships so we can keep shipping fucking avocados across an ocean so you can have your smoothie in January.
That's exactly right. Your avocado smoothie in January in Manitoba.
Yeah, avocado toast.
Right, exactly. And that, I mean, we're just the only way through what is going to happen in the next 100 years is to do less. We need to do less. We need to spend less energy moving stuff around. And I mean, so much energy, there's so much, we have added so much entropy to the system, just moving stuff around because we can, in search of pleasure, in search of variety, in search of ease, in search of comfort. I think that's one, you know, I think that's one of the things that bothers me so much about, there's so much that bothers me about our current culture, is that it is so rooted in comfort, and comfort is such a massively powerful motivator for people. They just want to be comfortable. Like, as long as they can have that aspect of their lives that requires them to, I mean, and this goes back to the conversation about monkhood. Like, these guys loved to suffer. Like, because they wanted to have such absolute control over their mind, body, and spirit that they, you know, St. Francis never slept on a bed. He slept on the floor his whole life. And if you can get by sleeping on the floor and surviving with just bread and water for weeks, like, imagine,
No, I need a soft bed, a pillow, and a cheeseburger, man. That ain't me.
Right. Well, nevertheless, though, just imagine what you would feel without. I mean, if any wonderful little thing, you know, came across.
Life is defined by hardship and struggle. Like, that's overcoming adversity is one of the things that makes life interesting. You know, I got a comment on one of my TikTok videos the other day, and it was somebody saying, "Hey, how come every time you pop up on my For You page, it's always something messed up?" Because my normal days are boring as shit. Nobody cares about them. Right? It's only when stuff goes sideways that anything's dramatic.
That's what the story. It's the story of uh, struggle and the transformation that is attained through struggle. Like that's. I mean, you might find this interesting. The other day, I have some friends. They're kind of more acquaintances actually, and they have a ranch in Northern California. And they're dissatisfied with the market prices on cattle. They're like, we're going to start a consortium. We're of people. Like 4 of our friends. We're going to sell beef directly to the consumer. Like so. I have some marketing questions, and I knew they were going to come in basically like, what do I put it on Craigslist or Facebook to advertise that I have beef? And I was like, you are not going to like the answer that I have for you because okay, first thing you have to do, identify your market, right? You identify your market. And what does your market want? It's not beef that your market wants. What your market wants is a story. And what makes a good story? It's suffering and transformation that comes through the suffering. So you have to provide your market with a story that involves suffering and transformation and comes out on the other end with a product that makes them feel good about themselves and their purchasing of that product. So my point is, if you keep doing exactly the same thing that you've been doing, like your conventional cow-calf operation, except this time you just keep it and then get it slaughtered yourself, no one will give a fuck at all. And that is the bottom line. So you have to develop some way of changing your.
I'm going to disagree with that. There's a lot of people. There's several people, not a lot. There's quite a few people that I know in my area that are successful marketing, selling on Facebook, still with grain finished cows. I mean, these aren't ones they're going out and getting from the feedlot. They're not going to feedlot, picking one out and then taking it to the local locker and having it broken down. They're taking one of theirs that they have grain fed at their house and having that broken down and selling that.
On a small scale, you can do that, and it should be done. You certainly should. But if you want,
there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with feeding grain to your cows.
What I'm saying is that if you want to make yourself a player in a larger market and make a real difference and do a large pivot, you have to have a story to tell people. I mean, and what I'm talking about is feeding hundreds of people. So that's what I'm talking about. I mean, there are tons of people here in Central Oregon. The cow per person capita is way high. If you want to go find some finished beef, the only thing standing in your way is how many slots are at the processor. That's the only choke point. But what I would say is the thing that has allowed us to be successful, basically starting from very little, is the story of transformation. And so, you think of
and that goes back to not just doing something differently, it's thinking differently.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
How come you didn't challenge me when I said there's nothing wrong with feeding cows grain?
Because some people think that, and that's fine.
I mean, I'm not saying that in the context, yeah, it's okay. I'm not saying I necessarily, would do that with my cows, but if you want to do that with your cows, that's okay.
I think the problem with feeding grain to your cattle is that
it's too high energy.
I think it's too high energy. Their rumen is not designed for it. But most importantly, this whole conversation we've been talking about is it's built on fossil fuels. It's not an honor. It's I don't want to say it's not honorable, but it's not utilizing the effective use of solar energy by using fertilizer and fossil fuels to grow grain and then harvest it and put it on a truck and then insert.
It's only been a thing for 60 years.
Right. It's a very new thing. And I have gained much more traction since I've given up on giving anybody any trouble at all about grain finishing cattle, because I believe that it's going to go away on its own.
It'll be economics. It'll be input cost economics, and it'll go away. It's like Cory Booker and Elizabeth Warren, like they don't need to worry about banning CAFOs. Like the way the economy is going, it's not going to be too many more years for $6 diesel fuel and 100% increase in input cost makes $12 corn. That makes all the feedlots impractical.
Right, and you know what's a lot cheaper than that? Temporary posts and poly reels. Like it's a lot cheaper than buying fuel, and ultimately, I think people will enjoy their lives more probably once they can overcome that initial discomfort of transitioning into a sort of different style of grazing. And one of the things and we're right back actually to the conversation about collapse ranching, because we'll figure it out as a species and as an industry, as a result of what we're doing of the input costs. But the people who will be at the position of maximum advantage are the people who have collapsed early and voluntarily, I think in a way that you and I have, and I think another thing that comes back to this whole comfort conversation is that people would much rather let their cows graze in big pastures than go out and move them so many times a day for two reasons. Number one, I think people don't like to walk that much. I think there's a part of, or put out that much effort or build fence that much. I don't think. And number two, I think as a result of this whole fossil fuel experiment, when people say, how do you have, they say, I don't have time to move cows 4 times a day. What they're really saying is I have to be out driving a piece of equipment.
Yeah. If you don't have time to go move your cows, even once a day, just once a day, if you don't have time to consistently do that once a day, 5 days a week, not saying you can't sleep in on a weekend, y'all. What do you do all day? I mean, seriously, it takes me, if a cow move takes me an hour, if I can't get both herds moved in an hour, it's a long morning. And I just got one of these herds 10 days ago. The other one's been here. Well, they're my cows. I bought them last year. I've had them, for a year and a half.
How's the
they're on
training
program. Just go open the gate.
go?
What was that?
How does the training aspect of the new herds go for you?
It's pretty easy. I mean, it's usually just a couple days. I make sure I've got some Cyclops energizers, and they're hot and fast. Taylor Cyclops. I think they're way hotter and way faster than anything else you can buy. And when I say faster, it's like time in between pulses.
Right.
And it's not just the first hit is hot. It's every hit after that is just as fast and it's just as hot with a Cyclops. With something like a Speed Ride or a True Test or any of the other ones that are the same color with a different brand or different color with a different name on them, they're slow. And you might get a good hit that first, 1 or 2 shocks, but by the time it shocks a third time, its power's going way down. Like I've been shocked by them enough. There's a difference. There's definitely a difference between 5 joule energizers. Like my 2.5 joule Taylors hit harder than a 3 joule Speed Ride.
I'll be darned.
Oh yeah.
So what you're saying is if you have if you have a high end enough, if you have a Cyclops, you can train them in the field. You don't need to do it in the corral.
Train them to hot wire in a corral. What?
Yeah, that's how
I do all that out in pasture. But I've also got 5-wire, 5-wire barbed wire fences around my perimeter, which you probably don't have. So, if they get from one paddock to another across my electric fence, in that first week, 10 days, it's just go out, open a gate, push them through, close the gate, fix the fence. Simple. But when I have that super hot energizer, like the problems just go away so much faster, like 3-4 days versus 2 weeks on one of those speed rides.
Interesting. I like that. And one of my favorite parts about this style of grazing that we do is that, if they by some chance do get out of the poly wire, they're just so happy to be on the other side of the poly wire that they're never over there fucking with the exterior fences.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't go run away. Like, yeah.
That's,
Like,
I mean,
like the herd I had on set stock. Do you see that TikTok? Like, I had a gate break and I had 200 cows out on the highway at 7:30 in the morning.
oh yeah, I did see that. I did see that. That's
Oh, that was horrible.
yeah.
Not
Yeah.
saying, not saying my strip graze polywire cows wouldn't do that, but they'd probably just, they might stay a little bit closer. Kind of reminds me of a meme I saw. Like, and I suppose it's worth mentioning because, you know, we're recording this on Thursday. I'm releasing it on Monday. So this is getting right out. It's corn stalk season. So y'all know the difference between one cow calmly grazing on the wrong side of the hot wire in the ditch and 400 cows on the road going to the coffee shop. One of those is a phone call. One's a text message.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, that's fantastic. Excellent.
You want to talk about fake meat today?
What now?
You want to talk about fake meat today?
Sure, I'm happy to. I mean, it's all everything that we talk about comes back to the same thing. It's about the utilization and deployment of energy, right?
Yeah. You know, I feel like the people that are eating fake meat, you know, I'm going to stop. I kind of feel like I should stop talking against fake meat. Like, if that's what you want to put in your body, if that's what you want to put in your body, go right ahead. Please, by all means, go right ahead.
Yeah, and certainly if you do, the issue though that I don't really have an issue, but let's just be real about it. I mean, it's
if you want to eat a Beyond Burger because you think it's better for the planet than my grass-fed cow, go ahead. Go right.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but yeah, I mean, and ultimately there's going to be no changing those people's mind. I mean, and that's part of the problem. People, we are so locked in our positions. I mean, I am just blown away at the, if you are skilled with words, you can somehow manage a way to get some degree of nuance in even a 4-line comment. But most people are completely incapable of inserting any degree of nuance into anything that they say, and which tends to indicate to me that they have no ability to understand nuance, which means that we really are speaking to a very, very narrow segment of the population that have the ability to kind of pick things out. Because you have the really thoughtful, considerate people, which is a tiny percentage, and then you have the "so you're saying" population, which is the rest of it, right? So you're saying that all cows are good for the planet. It's like, no, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is cows raised appropriately are good for the planet. It's like the amount of new, and so these people are able to be pulled down. They're able to be pulled down this path, by the nose, by just this very, very.
You can't argue with an idiot on the internet because they will drag you down to their level and beat you severely.
That's right. I've learned that the hard way on TikTok comments for sure. And there's one burning motivation for Beyond Burger, and it is people's guilt. That motivation is actually the best thing that sells beef that I have found. People's guilt. Here's a Shaquille O'Neal quote. He said, when I was with Jeff Bezos one time, Shaquille O'Neal said this, and he said, my entire investment strategy is about what changes people's life, right? And so I started thinking about the beef that we sell and the story that we tell along with it. And what is it about that changes people's life? It's not that you can go find a grass-fed beef steak somewhere. You can find a grain-fed steak somewhere. You can find good beef. You can find shitty beef. You can find beef you can afford. You can find expensive beef. But the reason that people always buy my beef and come back to it is and even though they say this is the best beef I've ever had, this is what beef tasted like when I'm a kid. I was like, I believe it. I'm sure you believe that. But I believe that the number one thing motivating these people to buy the beef that I raise is that it makes them feel less guilty about eating beef. And that is why people are eating Beyond Burgers. It's because they feel like they are actively hurting the environment and hurting the climate by eating beef. And if you're eating Harris Ranch feedlot.
Sue me.
Well, no, yeah, please don't sue me.
Don't sue us.
They're like it's probably, it is possible, and in all probability that is harder on the environment, according to my opinion and my opinion alone, um, than something that is grazed in its natural migratory, ecologically harmonious way. And so if this goes back to, and so if we are going to continue in the beef industry, as you and I have known for a long time and discussed, we have to reclaim the moral high ground that is currently occupied by people who think eating lab grown meat is better for the environment than eating beef that is acting as a keystone species and bringing all of the other tangential species around it into their natural ecological place.
And you know, the stuff they put in those Beyond Burgers, and I don't even know all the names, just the not meat, the fake meat. Wonder how much of that crap they got from China, like some of their raw source ingredients they had to get from China.
It's the electric car of food, right?
It's virtue signal.
It's a virtue signal, and it's built on a fossil fuel foundation, and it somehow gives people the illusion that they're doing something reasonable for the economy, or the ecology, and for the climate, and for the environment. It's like it's virtue signaling.
Would you buy a Cybertruck? Would you buy a Tesla Cybertruck?
Oh, I'd probably I would not be in
I
that
would.
generation of people. It's like any surgical procedure. You don't want to be the first one to get it. You don't want to be the last one to get it. So I'll wait. Well, I'll wait to see how those turn out. Like, for instance, like if you have an operation with a lot of elevation change, that would be a great application for that.
Or if you live on top of a mountain with a solar, and you've got solar panels, you charge on the way down. That's
exactly right. You're every time you hit the brake, you're charging that battery up. So
I think I'd get one. Like, it doesn't make economic sense, but if I had that much money lying around, or Elon wanted to give me one, I'd give it a shot. I think those Tesla trucks look pretty cool, and 500-600 mile range on a charge. I think that might be enough. The towing capacity, though, it's going to have a hard time pulling a gooseneck full of cars in a sale barn.
Aren't they supposed to be able to pull quite a lot, though? I don't know.
I think they're rated to pull like 14,000 pounds, which that's not a trailer full of calves for me.
What now?
That's not a trailer full of calves. I mean, that's 14,000 pounds is a light duty pickup. That won't haul my skid steer. That won't haul calves to town. That won't haul a horse trailer. That might haul a little cargo trailer. That might haul a boat to the lake, but that's not going to work for me.
Yeah. It's good. It's going to be interesting to see the energy usage and deployment in the agriculture industry. Is just going to continue to be fascinating. And
there is a company out there that's like building like class 3, 4, 5, 6 chassis. And I talked to him, and for something like we talked about it, and I forget the numbers. I can go back and look at the email and tell you later, but like for something that would fit my mission, that I could get up, go to work, feed calves, go out, feed cows with, then hook onto the trailer, go, 2 hours to the sale barn, and come back without having to charge $150,000 was his ballpark of what that would cost.
And since
to get
money,
that much battery in one of his trucks.
And since money is the language of energy, what does that really say about how much energy is being saved?
Very little. Like it makes a statement to how much that value ratio is distorted, honestly. And by that, like we have to kind of unpack a little bit, like, in order to get to electric cars. Okay. Like, yeah, we had electric cars 100 years ago. I get that. They weren't very efficient. Then again, neither were internal combustion engines back then. Now we have fantastically efficient electric motors and electric systems and batteries, but they also require computers, which, like, I've never seen one made. I've put one together from parts, which is kind of difficult to do in itself. It's probably easier now than it was. I'll get a date myself, like almost 20 years ago, the first time I did it. Anyway, all those components, like, the chip, the main chip, the graphic, and then the graphics chip. Those things are so small and they require very, very tiny amounts of extremely rare things, gold and, iridium, vanadium, it's like rare earth elements. Those are still being present in microchips. Like, we still have to put those in. Yeah, every time they get a little bit better at making them, they make them a little smaller, they use a little bit less, but then they just build more. So demand keeps going up. We can't have these fantastically efficient self-driving Teslas without a lot of computers. And those computers stand on a mountain, a literal mountain of raw materials mined only by fossil fuels. Like, there is no way you can replace that. Like, I cannot see a way in my head to replace the technology pyramid powered by fossil fuels that takes raw materials and makes a damn Tesla. Like, yeah, I can't see that electrified.
Well, that's because you see the whole system as it, this is why the wool can't be pulled over your eyes, Brian, as well as easily as most people, because you're a systems thinker. And if you see, was it John Muir said that, in the Walking in the Woods one day, he's writing about walking in the woods one day. He's like, I try to pull out one piece of, walking in the woods, I try to pull out one piece and I immediately realize it's all hitched to the rest of it, and that's exactly what we're talking about. I mean, it's just, most people are content to stop one step beyond the initial thought. Well, this leads to this, leads to this, leads to this, leads to this, is very exhausting for most people. But people like you are not particularly exhausted by that, and in fact, you thrive on it, and it energizes you to think that way. And most people are not that way. And in getting to your comment earlier about the geopolitical implications of energy, a huge amount of the chips that are in existence today are made in Taiwan, and we all know how precarious Taiwan's geopolitical situation is right now, and probably one of the things that is driving China's lust for it.
Is TMSC, I think it's called, Taiwan something semiconductor.
I think I think several years ago they started moving a lot of their operations to the Arizona desert, if I remember correctly, because of this exact reason. And most of the Intel chips, I believe, actually are made in Oregon and Hillsboro, Oregon. I think that's one of the reasons why Oregon is doing somewhat well economically.
I just read an article about this last night about that Intel had shopped out a lot of their lower end chips to TMSC.
Interesting.
And yeah, and TMSC, being in Taiwan, they got hit by COVID pretty early and they shut down. And those ripple effects are still being felt in semiconductor shortage. Like, it was probably June last year when I started hearing about like IT components, networking components, instead of being available second or third day, being told, oh, maybe a month. We're having a few snafus getting stuff. And that month turned into 3 months. And now, like, I think we're all pretty well aware of the supply chain disruptions going on. We've all seen that, everybody's seen the pictures of, hundreds of ships stacked up port, hanging out in the Pacific Ocean, waiting to get into the port of LA to unload.
That's right.
And port of LA is full. Like, it's full of containers. It's full of boats. Like, the trucks coming in, like, there's a line of trucks trying to come in to get stuff out. Like, like, big is fragile. Like Temple Grandin said, big is fragile. And like, these, like, a year and a half ago when COVID started, I thought that maybe about now we would the supply chains would start evening out. Like I thought the supply chains were going to be back to kind of normal about now, a year and a half ago. I really did. I was wrong, apparently.
Yeah, yeah. It's it'll be interesting to see how the whole thing plays out. But obviously, what it does is highlight the necessity for a resilient, resilient systems. I mean, if you don't have any centralized systems, have no redundancy built in, and decentralized systems have a ton of the more redundancy, the more decentralized a system is, the more redundancy is built in. And the problem is redundancy is expensive from a perspective of trying to amass wealth, trying to extract value from the system.
Hoard energy.
That's right. That's right.
Because that's what wealth is. I mean, it's just a hoard of stored energy that you can expend at will.
That's exactly right. That's exactly what it is. And that is power. And an interesting thing about the human psychology is that people would rather have that than use it. They would rather, and that is interesting because that's what that's an abscess. It's in the human organism. Stored energy that is locked up and not able to go somewhere else is I don't know, you might call it inflammation, you might call it an abscess, but it's like the energy is not flowing. And ecologies are very similar to economies, right? And carbon is the language. Carbon is the money. It's funny. Wow, that's interesting. Money is the language of energy, and carbon is the money of the ecosystem.
Let's say currency of the ecosystem.
Yeah,
carbon is the currency of the ecosystem, and money
is the language of energy.
The language of energy.
Maybe we should hire a ghostwriter and write a book.
And I like it. That's good.
But I mean, that's right. I mean, if carbon slows down too much in an ecosystem, if it's a wet ecosystem, you get overgrown forest, right? If it's a dry ecosystem, eventually it all burns away and then it's gone, But if the carbon, I mean, that's why plains, less dense savanna, and more dense savanna, properly managed, are like economies where the velocity of money is adequate, the velocity of carbon is adequate to keep all of the forms of life operating at a reasonable efficiency and keeps everything alive, because carbon is nothing but just like energy and food for the next form of life. So if we keep that carbon cycling and all of its minions in the various nutrients and elements and minerals going along with it, then we have this big, beautiful machine of life known as the ecology that's operating well. And it's so interesting. All of that thought just came out of the idea that rich people are hoarding energy. That's really interesting. I like that a lot. Yeah, it took us an hour and 45 minutes, but we're finally getting into some good stuff here, Brian.
Yeah. And I only scheduled 2 hours.
That's right. That's good. I mean, and I think in these two conversations that we've had, I mean, I must admit I've failed to listen to enough of your conversations with other people that there seems to be a pervasive theme in the conversations that you and I have that really relates to carbon, energy, solar energy, efficiency, and just which and I'm trying to, through these two conversations that we've had in this forum, I'm trying to sort of tease out what the thesis really is, and ultimately it's a central, and that thesis, I really believe, which I necessarily haven't been able to tease out yet, is at the heart of what this whole regenerative agriculture movement is. You can walk around, or you can put up Instagram posts all day saying we have to help the soil. It's like, yeah, but what does that mean? Like, what are the larger implications of that? And what is the common thread running through all of these conversations that points to the heart of a healthy existence,
On the macro level, I'm just gonna have to say calories consumed for calories produced. Like, And I got to give my dad credit for that one. Like, because he's been saying that one for over 20 years. Calories produced, calories consumed. Like, just trying to wrap your head completely around that concept. I mean, you actually said it. You're the first person I've heard besides me and my dad to really say calories consumed versus calories produced. Because at the end of the day, like, if we can't produce more calories than we are consuming in that production of those calories, we're not doing anything. We are going backwards as a species rapidly.
Mhm.
Right. And I think, to some extent we are, we are going like face first into the crash at warp speed because we're ignoring these things like the energy balance. We're using ancient stored fossil fuel energy to artificially supplement the available energy to boost production for more people.
That's
And
right.
it enabled, okay. And I don't want to talk that, I don't want to like say I'm bad on oil or oil production or modern technology. It's wonderful. Modern medicine is great. It's allowed us a lot of things. Like the internet is fantastic. I had a rant about microchips, but you're listening to this on a device that has a microchip in it. It's just phenomenal to me sometimes to think, like, even the power of this medium. You and I sitting here recording this on Zoom. You're on the West Coast, I'm in the middle of the country, and it's like we're just been sitting here for the last almost 2 hours just having a conversation, just two guys. And this is going to go out to a whole bunch of people. Like, I hit almost 1,000 is about what listens to us that's about what we get listeners wise. Like, just that is possible with the technology and what all that technology is built on. It's mind-boggling. And sometimes I just have a hard way of imagining life without it, or seeing how we can kind of survive on a lower energy budget and maintain a technological standard of living.
Well, I mean, I think there's a profound amount of waste that's happening. We're using a huge amount of fossil fuels in ways that don't really need to use fossil fuels. And I think that's maybe one of the things that's at the heart of regenerative agriculture is like, this is not one of those things where we need to be spending that much fossil fuel. We could, it's naive to say we could easily shift it overnight. Totally naive to say that. But over the course of 10 to 20 years, we could reduce that need a huge amount if we really decided, if we came together as a culture behind, operating under one animating principle, then we could dedicate that usage, that fossil fuel usage in its reduced capacity to other things that allow us to maintain this connectedness. Like the connectedness that we have has yielded unbelievably beautiful things. Like I don't want to give up cell phones, computers, the internet. I think those are amazingly important for the advancement of the human race. But I think that one of the things that has come with it is the just absolutely opulent use of fossil fuels in areas where it is completely unnecessary, and in fact counterproductive to people's happiness and well-meaning. And I think that splinters out. If you're using fossil fuels in an unnecessary way, that creates other jobs and industries that continue to use more fossil fuels in unnecessary ways. And if we can just start to rein all of this stuff back in and go, okay, and then we get into the discussion of free markets versus centralized planning, which is its own mess, which I guess that eventually, leads to, what will eventually prioritize the use of fossil fuels, hopefully will be, when that moment comes, that we realize as a species that we cannot continue on this same path. I hope that we can come together and prioritize our use of the remaining high density energy sources that we have, for the betterment of everyone instead of wasting things. And maybe that's one of the things that drives this thought that I've been having lately about a more monastic or mendicant existence for humanity, because if we are able to give up all of those trappings of fossil fuel, maybe we can truly dedicate the usage of it to the things that matter and make our lives better. I don't think going to get coffee every morning at the coffee shop is that important. I don't think I think if you go down the list of all of the jobs that people do and the population distribution into each of those jobs, I think most people are probably doing work that is not really necessary, filtered through the lens of the highest and best use of humanity. And maybe that's just
I think like 90% of people have a useless job.
That's probably right. And maybe that's just an artifact of where we are right now. And maybe this is the alchemy that we have to go through in order to arrive at this higher position, this higher state of consciousness where we're utilizing the available energy to us as effectively as we can. Like, there's no way to stop entropy. Like, eventually the sun is going to turn into a white dwarf or whatever, and consume the planet Earth. Like, that's going to happen. And eventually we're going to introduce so much disorder into the system that all of that is going to happen. But our task is to slow it down as much as we possibly can. The effective and organized use of energy is effectively the slowest, is the lowest amount of entropy introduced into the system. If you can lower the amount of entropy and get as much of a, I'd have to talk to a physicist about this, but because my basic understanding of entropy would be that, we don't need to have 32.5 fossil fuel calories for every calorie of beef that's produced. That's not necessary. Like, we can lower that. We can still get 1 calorie of beef for a much lower cost. And yes, that cost is probably always going to be slightly higher than what comes out, because that's the nature of physics. But that discrepancy, what did you call it? The value
Energy value ratio.
Energy value ratio. The energy value ratio is so skewed that our responsibility is to get that down as close to even as possible, even knowing that we'll never be able to get it down to 1-to-1.
Like, it's the energy value ratio is so bad. Okay. Like, the analogy I like to use is a gallon of gas to an hour of labor. So what's a gallon of gas in Oregon? I think we said it earlier, like, what are you, $3.50?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
All right. You want to hire somebody to work for an hour. What's it going to cost you right now?
It's going to cost you 5 gallons of gas, probably.
So $15.
Yeah.
$15. Okay. That 1 gallon of gas will take a vehicle X distance. X distance is also equal to what it would take 500 people pushing that for an hour. Like, 15 times 500. I don't know. I'm not real good at math. It's like, what, $750, $650, something like that. Let's call it $600. $600 versus a $3 gallon of gas. Yeah. Tell me the energy value ratio is not out of whack.
Yeah. What were you doing? Let's see. Obviously, it was just like 15 times 500, right? That's $7,500.
Yeah, $7,500. Okay, I was off at zero. $7,500 worth of human energy to replicate what $3.50 worth of gasoline will do. Like, yeah, the energy value ratio is way out of whack.
And ultimately, it requires us. That's why there's an aspect of sacredness to this that is missing. And I think that's one of the things that my critiques of regenerative agriculture itself is it's still just another transformation of that industrial, scientific, materialist way of looking at the world. Whereas if you were able to look at this gallon of gas and go, oh my God, do we know, like, can you believe what is contained in this? Like seriously, this is a fucking miracle in this gallon of gasoline. if we were able to look at it that way, we would not be wasting it so much. And we would not, and those of us who have an appreciation for it are still somehow locked into systems that require us to use it to some degree. And that's why it's on us to get rid of that as much as we possibly can. And that's why I say, like, I'm not a regenerative agrarian, or I'm not a regenerative rancher. I'm a collapse rancher, or I'm a fossil fuel averse rancher. Like, my whole goal is to get away from wasting, from being real. Like, how inefficient are we if we require $7,500 a gallon of gas to do one little thing? You know, it's insane. And our values, it's interesting. The energy value system, the farther off the energy value ratio becomes, the farther our value system as a species becomes. It seems to me.
For sure. And that's not fixed and they're trying to fix it by increasing the price of human labor relative to the price of energy. Like, because that's the only play. Like, that's the only play the people in power have in order to stay in power. They have to keep that value ratio distorted. But eventually, like, the music's going to stop. And, you know, the price of oil is going to go up real fast. And that's when the music stops. And that's when things get really, really ugly.
It's like, I mean, they're having to increase the speed of, they're having to increase the speed of inflation. And that's like, in order to stay in the same place, they're having to ride their bike faster and faster and faster in order to stay in the same place. And when that happens, it starts to wobble. And we've been seeing it wobble pretty well since 2008. And they've been doing everything they can to keep it stable, but they're running out of options to keep the bike stable, to keep the vehicle stable. And the only way is to inflate our way out of it. Processor's calling me.
Well, we've just blown past 2 hours.
Well, let's table this conversation for let's get another couple of months of rumination and hit it again at some point. That sounds
great, buddy. Tell us again where we can find you on social media.
TikTok at Sisters Cattle Co. Instagram is the same, Sisters Cattle Co. I know there are more people on Instagram. I just make TikTok videos and then shuttle them over to Instagram.
That's the easy way.
It's the easy way. And I don't know, I'm on Facebook, but I never check the Facebook. I'm sure I have lots of hate mail on Facebook I need to reply to. But anyway, yeah, TikTok's the best. You can also visit the website, sisterscattleco.com. And if you're in the Central Oregon area, sorry you've missed your last chance to get our beef, probably. And if you're in the Lufkin, Texas area, or anywhere in the Houston, Austin, Dallas, Oklahoma City corridor, look forward to seeing you.
Are you gonna stop by and see me on your way down?
That's a good idea. I could take a.
I mean, I'm not on the way, I'm out of the way between.
You're not that far out of the way.
It'll be a detour. I mean,
maybe, but yeah, that's a good idea. I should do that.
Because I would imagine, like, that time of year, you're gonna want to just blast down the West Coast and then come across on 10.
Yeah, that might be a good idea. I do have a delete kit on my pickup, so that might be a problem going through California if I get pulled over. But
go through
other than that, speaking of energy use, anyway,
mine's deleted too.
Right. Okay. Good. All right. We're in the same boat. All right. Good. Yeah. Well, I know that for one way or the other, we're going to get together here in the near future. That's for sure.
Can't wait, buddy.
All right.
It's been great today. Thanks.
Wonderful. All right.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, Brian.